Welcome to this episode of Pick My List. This is the series where my Grail Knight tier supporters choose the list that they want me to play every month, and I've been told to pick Wood Elves, Triple Sister of the Thorn meta Wood Elves. I have given it a bit of spice, gone for Double Stag, which I think is more interesting than the Dragon version. I actually think it's better. So I played a couple of games, and none of them ended up in being sort of good bat rep fodder. Honestly, both of them ended earlier than I would have wanted to make a video out of, ending on turn 3 and turn 5. So I decided I'm enjoying this list. Let's take it to SBOT. This is my list for the square-based online tournament number 2, and this is round 1. Just a quick note before I get into this game, something that I didn't realise until I was going back to record the battle report was that my free wood, you can see here, is 3 inches too close to the centre of the board. I did talk to my opponent about it after the game, and he said that he didn't think it affected the way that the game was played out, and I'll show you where I should have placed it. And I've also run it past the TO, just to be fully above board, but I did place it too close to the centre of the board, so you'll see that on the screenshots that are coming up. The place I should have placed it was here, just a little bit further back. Realistically, it doesn't change the way that I'd have played the game. I could have, I screened off the right-hand side of the board with some archers anyway, so I'd been safe deploying there. And realistically, it's probably better given that the Doomseekers were running towards me, but it is something that I do need to be aware of and make sure that I'm deploying correctly. So, what am I bringing to SBOT? Well, I'm bringing Wood Elves because I think they're really solid. I was aware of the Royal Host going into the event, and this list I think it does very poorly into that list, but I also wasn't really expecting it to be in my pod, and just thought, on the balance of probability, probably wasn't going to play it, and I just wanted to get some reps in with Wood Elves. I think they're incredibly fun to play. So, this list, I'm aware that my face is cutting off a little bit of it. I can either make the list small so you can't read it, but all the words are on the screen, or I can, just make it a bit bigger and tell you what's in it. I will post links to both lists down below, so if you want to read them in detail, you can do. The list here is fairly standard with the exception of there is no dragon, and there are double stags. There's 2 stags in this list, which I think is fun. I don't know if 2 is the correct number. The Glade Lord is really solid. I really like the Glade Lord. The Glade Captain, I'm a little more out to lunch on. I'm not 100% sure on this one, but it's fun. It's performed well so far, so I'm going to keep testing it out. So the list is, there is the Glade Lord, who is the Warlord, who has got a Bedazzling Helm for -1 to be hit at all times. Befuddlement of Mischiefs, so 1 minute in base-to-base contact with the Glade Lord is -1 initiative and -1 weapon skill. I've also got a Resplendent of Luminescence, which gives him magical attacks, really important if you're facing off into the Green Knight, or if you catch some other ethereal units such as Banshees, something along those lines, or those pesky Wood Elves with their ethereal high magic level 4 caster. Not expecting to see those, but it'd be nice if you did have to deal with them. So yeah, that's his loadout. He's got a great weapon. Because he's got the Bedazzling Helm, he's up to a 2-up save combined with light armor, shield, Bedazzling Helm, and then Armored Hide 2 from the Stag. There's also the Glade Captain, who is also on a 2-up save. He's got the same, but instead of the Bedazzling Helm, he's got the Helm of the Hunt. That gives him +1 attack and +1 weapon skill. So on the charge, he's effectively a Glade Lord. He is 4 attacks at weapon skill 7. He has the Annoyance of Netlings. So he's not -1 to hit all of the time, but in a challenge, he is -1 to be hit. So a little bit squishier than the Glade Lord, especially because he hasn't got that 4th wound. Also, I've decided to go for the Talisman of Protection on the Glade Lord. Just means that I can throw more willy-nilly into something that I really need to tie up and not be quite as worried, which is, I think, quite important. There are 2 casters in this list, a Spellweaver level 4 and a Spell Singer level 2. Both are battle magic, and the level 4 has the Oaken Stave, or Broken Stave, as you might have heard it called. It increases your dispel range by 3 inches, and when you're dispelling, you roll 3d6, drop the lowest. You're almost never going to be outclassed in the arts, which is nice, and you're pretty likely to get the dispel off unless you're playing against, I don't know, Mortuary Cult or something like that. I've also got the Ruby Ring of Ruin on that caster, which is just, it's got to go somewhere. This is a good place to put it. The level 2 has a Power Scroll and Lore Familiar. This means that I can pick every game Pillar of Fire. Obviously, this is the Pillar of Fire list, and it also lets you choose between Arcane Urgency if you don't roll it on your level 4, because the downside of the Oaken Stave is you do have to roll your spells. There's no way to increase from 4 spells to 5 or pick them. But then you either pick Arcane Urgency if you don't get it on the level 4, or you go and take Tree Singing, just because the space control from putting down a couple of extra woods is really, really strong. So that's the characters there. Not quite 1,000 points, but it's a standard old world list. You're getting pretty close to 1,000 points. Into core, we've got 2 units of Glade Riders that are really important. So the first is a unit of 8. They've got reserve move. Obviously, they're equipped with Hagbane tips. I've got a musician and a Glade Knight in there. No banner. The Glade Knight is in case they ever get caught. I can challenge out some big beastie if I get caught by a dragon. I don't necessarily get killed. I just lose combat massively and run away, which gives me a little bit of a, potential for not getting destroyed. And also I have got a musician in there in case I ever need to march, again, when there's a dragon breathing down my neck, or if I just want to rally. They've only got leadership, I want to say leadership 9 on the caster, but I'd have to double check that one. It's not as high as you might like it to be for an elf army. Obviously, leadership 9 is incredible. The second unit of Glade Riders has the only command is a standard bearer, and they have the Banner of the Hunter King. So that gives you Vanguard. They do have an 8-inch move, but they're going to be joined by both of the stags. So they're also drilled. You can set them up however you fancy, whatever's most convenient. You can then drill into marching column. You do have to be at a little bit of an angle if you want to pull that off. Obviously, they've got quite long bases, and if you want the stags to stay at the front, yada yada. But this is a great unit. Gives you an 8-inch pre-game move. Then you can do a 16-inch march, arcane urgency them. You can very comfortably have a couple of stags in your opponent's lines turn 1, or you can just use it more defensively. It's a really flexible unit, and it's also got the Hagbane tip. So after you've disembarked your characters from it, if you do, you can leave them in there if you want to, depending on the matchup. You can just have another 5 shots that are going to, poodle around on the back of the horse, which is still nice to have. Then finally, rounding out the list, it is Triple Sisters of the Thorn, and they are the things that you'd expect to see. They have the Handmaiden of the Thorn, the Sergeant. They have a standard bearer, and that means that they are casting at +2. They're going to be picking Pillar of Fire most games. Sometimes you might want to go for you might want to go Wind Blast, like it's a potential out if you get stuck into the big unit of the Royal Host, but a good player won't let you Wind Blast them off the table. They'll just put something behind you. More realistically, you might go for something like Plague of Rust. You're probably not doing it because it's hard to get off. The nice thing about the casting a Pillar of Fire on a 9 is that you have multiple times to get it off. If you don't get it off turn 1, maybe you get it turn 2. Oh, I didn't get it turn 2. I'll get it turn 3. Whereas Plague of Rust, you kind of need to get it the turn that you go for it. It's fairly important there. But yeah, that is the list. It's fairly standard. As I say, it's got less shooting than most of the Wood Elf lists you might have seen. I have skewed more into combat. This is anti-Bretonians, and also just some cheeky, maybe trying to deal with Mortuary Cult, because if you can get one of those characters into the back line to deal with Casket of Souls, you're going to be pretty pleased about that. Moving on, I do have Mikel on the line to talk about his list, which is always fun. So, hearing more about the Expeditionary Force after this. Great. So, I'm joined by Mikel. We have just played our round 1 game of the SBOT, and he's here to give us a little bit of overview for his list. So what was the sort of list building philosophy when you put this one together, the Expeditionary Force?
So my idea was to do something different to what I usually have. I've always liked the idea to go with the Dwarfs forward, yes, get into the enemy. I did make a mistake. I didn't think of the Pillar of Fire. In this game, that was completely... I just couldn't move forward.
Yeah.
But yeah. I actually wanted to test the Expeditionary Force and the Miners, because it's it's a dwarf list, but that plays nothing like a dwarf list. And I played dwarves for forever.
Yeah.
And back in 6th edition, when the Rangers weren't good, I was playing Rangers, and when the Gyrocopters weren't good, I was playing Gyrocopters. And I was like, here I can play everything I want, and they are better now. So
makes sense.
I did think having 2 units of Rangers a bit different. One that could go into combat, so that's why they have a magic standard with the Room of Battle, and that's why the BSB would go in there. So that depending on what I'm playing, to or pretty much all the heroes are going to go on that big Rangers unit with Warlock to not get the long range penalty, and also with Engineer, maybe with the Sapper to make them entrench. It really depends. And then I wanted another unit to be more like aggressive, because I've had some success with very aggressive Rangers charging into Wood Elves into the forest and kicking them out of the forest, because they once the Rangers get there, they cannot fight them.
No, absolutely. They're really hard to get rid of once they're stuck in.
Yeah, and I come to love the grudge throwers, to be honest, because you cannot hide from them.
Yes, they in this game. I'm going to put this little interview segment before the game, so no spoilers. But they did a lot of work, because I'm being a Wood Elf player. I'm hiding from you. You can't hide from a grudge thrower.
No, it doesn't. And the gyrocopters are great. I want to try the scout gyrocopters. They have been great. I mean, they killed the captain. They killed captain on the charge.
They did some real work, didn't they?
Yeah, actually, I think they are the only ones that have killed a whole unit.
Yes, that's true. So just to wrap up very quickly, you've got 3 Doomseekers. That's pretty spicy. Do you think that you'll stick with 3 Doomseekers going forwards?
I think I will. I don't think I will put runes on them, because on past games, I have the issue that I had one with runes and one without runes. And the one with runes killed a lot of stuff, but it didn't die. It wouldn't die. So it ended up giving a lot of points to the other side.
Yeah.
And I did. My list originally had 4 Doomseekers, but then I was told that I couldn't have the 4.
No, just wanted as many as possible. Well, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure game, and for everyone who's watching, you can see that now. Okay, something slightly different. If I get chance when I'm playing my games, I'm going to try and take some actual screenshots instead of the normal Warhol output that you get. This is the deployment that we went for. So as you can see, I've got my wood, as mentioned, too far forwards. It should be further back. You can see this wouldn't have affected my deployment. But I have basically hidden my entire army as best as possible. I lost the roll-off, so I had to put a unit down first. Mikel, we actually miscounted his units, so realistically he should have put 1 unit down first, and then I started going, so he got the +1 because we had the same number of drops. It didn't actually end up mattering, because all of his first few drops were the gyrocopters. They have got a Vanguard move, so they've got a lot of flexibility. You can see one there. I think as I took the screenshot, he was in the middle of doing the Vanguard move on the first one. So I have got all of my stuff bunkered up behind the wood. So I've got the unit of 5 Sisters of the Thorn behind the wood in the center. I've got 5 Sisters of the Thorn over to the right behind some Glade Guard. The Glade Guard is down there because I was really worried about getting flanked by a unit of Rangers that were going to scout in and cause me some issues. I've got the big unit of Glade Riders tucked in. Both characters are on there as well, the Spellweaver and the Spell Singer. Behind them, I've got 5 marching columned Sisters of the Thorn as well. All of my sisters went for Pillar of Fire. Obviously, it's a very strong spell. It's kind of the default. There are some exceptions to when you might want to take it, which might be something I talk about later on. But for now, it's, triple Pillar of Fire. I'm just going to try and play the keep away game. So everything's bunkered up as much as possible, and then on the left flank you can just see on the top of that hill the double stags and the Glade Riders with the Hunter's King banner. There's a vanguarded forwards 8 inches as well. You can see I've got a unit of 8 Deepwood archers scouted up towards the building in the top left, and I've got the other unit just sat behind some woods. The unit that's behind the building is literally just there to stop me from getting shot through the middle, this gap that again shouldn't actually be there between the 2 woods. And that's just taking space as well, which I thought was really important. My opponent decided that he was going to put his Rangers in his deployment zone, and he bunkered up pretty heavily. So he had a unit of Rangers that he deployed normally up on the hill there, and he attached most of his characters to it. The second unit of Rangers went down in the woods. You can't see them here. I do swap over to flat terrain for later screenshots, I believe. But there's a unit of smaller unit of rangers there in the woods. There's the Doomseekers that are vanguarded forwards. There's the 2 units of scout gyrocopters that are going to vanguard forwards, and then there's a single lone normal gyro that is on the left flank as well from my perspective. The dwarf cart is just next to the big unit of rangers. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what the use for it is, but maybe it just isn't the right list to play against it. It's super cheap as well, so I don't think it's a downside to having it in the list. And of course, double grudge thrower set up over to the right. These grudge throwers went down really late, and they were actually a really solid position. I was hoping that I'd be able to avoid basically getting shot off the board, and I was using screening units there. But as you'll see early on, a good chunk of shooting does land where I don't want it to. So there we go. If we pop over to the Warhol output, you can see that the rangers are in the woods, the rangers are on the hill, the grudge throwers are in the top right, or the left for Mikel's perspective, and then you've got everything else just sort of clustered around. For me, I've got the Deepwood Scouts over by the building in the centre. I've got the Glade Riders bottom left that are vanguarded forwards. Sisters of the Thorn just hiding from danger as much as possible. Want to put their Pillars of Fire down and then not die. That's their game plan. And then the big unit of Glade Riders that's not showing up properly on the output, but they are there with the Spellsinger and the Spellweaver attached as well. So, after all is said and done, we've done our Vanguard moves, everything's moved forwards, and it turns out that Mikel wins the roll-off. I roll a 3, and he rolls a 6 and then gets the +1. So looking good for him, which is, I really wanted to pick up the scouting units that were coming forwards before he got a chance to. So I wasn't ideal, but this was a matchup that I was pretty comfortable with, so it wasn't the end of the world. Coming into turn 1, you can see that the Scout and the regular gyros have moved forwards, the Rangers have stayed still, and everything else has just kind of shuffled around to position to try and catch me. Not a huge amount of movement going on for turn 1, just sort of sending forwards the shooting that can. Obviously, I'm going to use my evasive here as much as possible. So the Rangers try and shoot into, or I think it was the gyros actually, try and shoot into the unit of Deepwood Scouts. The Deepwood Scouts are evasive backwards from some shooting from the regular gyros. They go from being at short range to long range, meaning that they only lose a single model, which is not too bad. More importantly, the Rangers on the right flank, the ones on the top of the hill, they light up the Deepwood Scouts, killing 3 of them. They fall back through the sisters. Don't call the sisters to panic, which is good. That's important. And then the double grudge thrower do land some shots, and they manage to kill, I think it's only a single Sister of the Thorn. The Sisters of the Thorn have a 4-up ward save, which is incredible for avoiding that sort of incidental firepower when a grudge thrower does land on your head. So they do some real good rolling, which is quite nice. Other than that, not too much happening. You can see on this screenshot here, we've got the double little black Warhol tokens that are on either side of the wood next to my deployment zone. Those are for the Expeditionary Force miners. They can come in as long as they're not within 6 inches of any of my units and fully within 6 inches of the token. So this is another bit of pressure that Mikel's trying to place on me early on. Coming into my turn number 1, and I managed to cast some Pillars of Fire. You can see there's 3 on there. That's the main thing. So basically, in the entire unit, the entire army positions forward. So I'm sitting behind a wood. I'm throwing some Pillars of Fire out. The unit that's on the right-hand flank that's taken a single model's worth of wounds from the grudge throwers, the Sisters of the Thorn down at the bottom right, they move forwards. They don't march, they just walk forwards, and I try to Arcane Urgency them to get them behind the wall. Fail the Arcane Urgency, so unfortunately I don't get to get them out of shooting for next turn, which does, actually matter. And other than that, I just do the normal Wood Elves things. So the unit with the double sisters, they reserve move forwards, they do some shots. Sorry, they move forwards, they do some shots, they plant some trees. They, both of the casters in there drop tree singing, so you've got some nice line of sight blocking in the center there. This is after I've shot with the Deepwood Scouts in the center. Basically, all of my incidental shooting goes off, and I managed to do, I think it's very little. It's just something like 2 wounds to the gyrocopters in the center. Not a huge turn 1, honestly, but I do get my Pillars of Fire off, which is important. On the left-hand flank, you can see here the 2 stag the Stag Lord and the Stag Captain, my favourite models in the army, they have detached from the unit. Both of them have marched forwards. So I've got the Stag Lord, who is currently behind a building. He's positioning to not be in line of sight of many of the rangers. So if they shoot into him, they're shooting at -3, -2 for partial cover, -1 for long range as well. Not partial cover, -2 for full cover. And also the Glade Captain is moving up to threaten the lone gyro, because I'm not worried about taking too much damage from a single model there. Other than that, that's about it for my turn 1. Bit of a slow one, but when I'm playing against a slow army like Dwarves, I don't feel like I've got a huge amount of pressure on me to do massive amounts of damage early on. Coming over to Mikel's turn, he does manage to dispel the Pillar of Fire on my top right flank, the one near his big Ranger Death Star, which is a good start, honestly, because if I could get it into those Grudge Throwers, I'm going to be very happy. The other 2 pillars stumble forwards, nowhere near anything, but you know what? Give it a few turns, they'll get there. We can see that the gyros do both march. So the ones up at the top, the ones that were behind the second squad, they move over to the left to try and deal with the Glade Captain, because 1 gyro isn't going to shoot him to death, but 3 might, 3 threaten it. The second squad, the ones with steam guns, they just march fully towards my Deepwood Scouts. This is very much try and put pressure on me, try and disrupt my game plan of just standing and shooting as much as possible. In the center, the 2 Doomseekers that are on the board. I forgot to mention one of the Doomseekers does have to start off the board due to the misbehaving mercenaries table. But the 2 that are on the board walk around the woods and just start getting towards me. At this point, it's going to be turn 4 before they get to charge me, which is my main my main quibble with them. But they are coming towards me, so I do have to respect that. And other than that, it's again just a little bit of shuffling and then quite a lot of shooting. So the 2 Grudge Throwers go off again, and this time, between the 2, they manage to kill 2 whole Sisters of the Thorn. So that leaves me with the banner, and it leaves me with the captain, the squad sergeant. I think she's called a handmaiden, something along those lines. Why is that important? Well, that means that I'm still casting my spells at +2, which again is important because my Pillar of Fire has been dispelled, so I'm going to need to try and get that off next turn. On the left-hand flank over here, you can see that the Glade Lord was shot at by the Rangers. Given the positioning of the other units, the way that the gyros have moved, I decide that I'm going to use my evasive to fall back, and that gives me a nice potential charge into the gyros, and I can start trying to threaten. What I don't want to do is charge back into my lines, because that leaves me really open to the Rangers, and the Glade Lord is tanky, but he's not that tanky. I don't want to risk being pulled apart by AP2 or potentially AP4 shooting if the Rune Lord's in that squad. So not all that much happens. A couple of Sisters of the Thorn do die to the Grudge Throwers. The Grudge Throwers are absolute MVPs in this list. They were really good. At some point, Mikel said that he wished he had a third one, which is very understandable. And other than that, just a lot of posturing, positioning, and trying to do some damage to the Stags. Coming into my turn 2, I declare a couple of charges, and one of them goes well, one of them doesn't. So the Glade Captain declares a charge into the squad of 2. He's about 16 inches away, so it's a long charge, but I feel reasonably confident in making it. I was like, I don't even think about failing it, which is a misplay. I should have considered my odds a little more. The Glade Lord charges into the single model, and that's a much easier charge. That's something like 12, 14 inches away, so not too much of an issue there. So, make my charge rolls, I take a stand and shoot, I take a wound from the stand and shoot, which I'm like, okay, this isn't ideal, but you know what, I'll get in, I'll do my damage, all be hunky-dory. Then I fail my charge roll with the Glade Captain, which leaves him well out in the open, which is not where I want to be. It's definitely a concern. The Glade Captain does get in, and I'm thinking, great, I'm going to munch this lone gyro and then move on with the rest of my life. In the center, basically all I do is I position so that I can shoot everything that's threatening my front lines. The Deepwood Scouts stay stationary. The Sisters of the Thorn move sideways and up just a little bit so they can see with their Blackbriar javelins. Strength 4 poison shooting. It's great. It's got AP on it. It's good. I managed to cast Pillar of Fire with the lone unit of 2. As I said before, it's important that I've got 2 left. The Sisters of the Thorn there, still casting, and they are, that Pillar of Fire is slowly inching towards the Grudge Throwers come next turn. And yeah, it's mostly chip damage. I kill one of the Doomseekers that's nearby. I don't want to kill them because if you kill a Doomseeker, your opponent doesn't give up the points for them. Basically, if they're alive, they give up points, and if they're dead, they don't give up points. So it's quite a nice points denial tool for the dwarf player. But it is what it is. They're running at my lines. I've got to kill them. It's only 50 points. I'm just going to have to deal with it. That's my problem. It goes quite well in the center. I do manage to get off the Curse of Arrow Attraction, and I do 3 wounds, I believe it is, or 2 or 3 wounds into the Gyros, and there's only 1 left, which is much less scary than what I was facing down last time. Double steam, the double flamer from the steam cannons is something that does genuinely threaten elves. Strength 3 is no joke when you're only T3. That's something you've got to really be careful of. So I'm feeling pretty good about things coming into, the bottom of 2. I've set up my Pillars of Fire are getting across the board, and I've done a reasonable amount of damage to the things that are coming towards me. So we go over to Mikel's turn 3, and I start off, and I get to do my Pillar of Fire turn, which is, the important thing. And that does kill the Doomseeker. Other than that, the 2 pillars don't move very far. So far, casualties to Pillar of Fire are 1 Doomseeker, which is minus 50 points for me effectively, because if I'd left them alive, he'd be down 50 points at the end of the game. But like I say, it had to die. What else comes on? Well, the reserves are rolled. They were rolled last turn as well, but nothing came on. But this turn, the Doomseeker and the Miners both come in. So the Miners come in from the left-hand marker, from my perspective, and then walk forwards to try and get a charge next turn. And the Doomseeker does the same. It comes on from the board edge, outside of I think it's an 8-inch screening that you have to come on when you reserves, and then, again, just walks forwards, trying to threaten a charge. The 1 wound taken, Gyro, with the steam copter with the steam gun, flies forwards, puts a breath template over 5 Sisters of the Thorn. I'm like, oh god, I wish I had evasive on this. This is going to suck. It's all partial hits, and Mikel rolls and only gets 2 hits, and then gets, I think, 1 wound, or maybe not even any wounds. Basically, nobody dies. These Sisters of the Thorn are proving surprisingly tanky. Up in the top left, the squad of 2 Gyros. These are regular, not scout ones, I believe. No, sorry, this is the squad of 2 scout copters. Charge into the Glade Captain, who's taken a single wound. So the Glade Captain has 2 wounds remaining. The 2 Gyros charge in. Mikel said, he's got a decent chance of picking him up. He's got the impact hits. He's got some attacks. I say, cool, let's go for it. I stand and shoot. I rolled a 6 to hit. I was like, great. Oh, wait, no, I didn't pay for poison on these because I'm not planning on shooting with them. Okay, no worries. Well, I'm only strength 4, your teeth, 4. Yeah, it's fine. I roll another 6. I was like, oh, hell yeah. I've got a wound going through at AP1. Mikel fails to save. With my Glade Captain, I get a pip of combat res for stand and shoot, and I'm feeling real confident about things. This is great. We go into combat, and I get to strike at the same time. I'm initiative 5. But unfortunately, I lose 2 wounds between the impact hit and the just general attacks. I whiff my rolls. In retrospect, maybe I should have used a hand weapon and shield instead of the great weapon, but then I think I would have been just tied up in combat forever. So, it is what it is. But maybe hand weapon and shield was the correct choice there. I'm not sure. Something to consider the future. But yeah, two Scout Gyros do charge in and mop up a Glade Captain, which is a solid 200 odd points to Mikel. So not a great start for me. Other than that, there is a little bit of shooting that happens. The grudge throwers are the things still whittling away. Both of them go into the big center of the unit of sisters that are in marching column behind the wood. They are hit no times, but the grudge thrower does scatter onto the other unit, the 2 models, which is not ideal for me because I don't want that unit to die. And Mikel does manage to do a single wound. The second one scatters 10 inches onto the squad of 3 Glade Guard that are just sort of chilling down towards the bottom. Mikel goes, you know what? I'm going to re-roll the artillery dice. And he does, and he gets an 8, and then it ends up not hitting anyone at all. So in retrospect, it would have been better to keep it. But he was fishing to try and get the Glade Guard. That would have been a much more efficient use of his damage there. But yeah, so again, not a huge amount happening in Mikel's turn. You can see up at the top here, a little bit of shooting from the Glade Guard, Glade Riders, I should say, did go into that cart. I was hoping to get enough poison wounds through to kill it and just pick up those 65 points. But I only did 2 wounds last turn. it then runs away behind the Rangers, relatively safe until that Pillar of Fire gets closer. Coming into my turn number 3, I have got some things to kill without extending myself, and that has become the name of the game. So I feel like I'm already comfortably ahead. I've picked up a few bits and pieces. Losing, the 200-point Glade Captain is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. I charge into the single gyro up at the top with my Glade Lord. That's nice and easy. I'm not worried about that. I pick it up comfortably and then just overrun into the wall. It means that I'm out of any potential fire arc of the Rangers that are sat in the woods. My Pillars of Fire all move forwards a frankly disappointing amount. They all inch forwards just a couple of inches, and no one gets really anywhere close to doing any damage. Other than that, I focus all my firepower into this sort of bottom left center point where I've got Glade Riders, I've got Deepwood Scouts, I've got another unit of Deepwood Scouts, I've got the Fire and Fade Glade Riders, I've got the Ruby Ring of Ruin in there as well. All of that goes in and kill most of the unit of Deepwood of Miners. There's only 3 left. I kill the last remaining 2 wounds off of the Scout Gyro, or the regular Gyro, sorry. The models are too similar on this printout. It's too hard to keep it tracked in my head. But yeah, so all that's left is the Doomseeker, which I'm considering running away from because it's just more points for me at the end of the game, and some miners that are not in charge arc or charge range of anyone, so I'm not feeling too worried about that one. So a very successful turn 3 to me. Coming over to Mikel's turn number 4, and this is where things finally change, and by that I mean the Pillar of Fire gets in. And by the Pillar of Fire, I mean literally one Pillar of Fire. Look at how far they've moved. So, the one in the woods moves 1 inches. The one on the right that's threatening the Rangers and, more importantly, the Grudge Throwers, that moves about 2 inches. And then finally, the big daddy does go through and hits the Rangers, kills a few of them, 2 or 3. Makes up for the fact that my pillars weren't getting in, because when my pillars did actually do some damage, they were consistently killing 2 to 3 models a turn, which was really nice. It just took them a long time to get there. I cast most of these on turn 1. It's now turn 4. They got to step their game up. So the pillar does hit into the Rangers. The Rangers decide to reform just as a way to get away from it, and also, they're not doing anything. There's not really anywhere for them to go, so they're just using the movement to do that. For the rest of Mikel's turn, the Doomseeker down at the bottom left does move forwards. It's obviously not going to catch anyone, but if he can put pressure on me so that there's a threat of a charge, it does mean that I, in later turns, probably have to kill it, because I can't afford to just leave it alive if it's going to charge me and then kill more than its 50 points worth. That's bad for me. I'm better off killing it at that point. Yeah, not all that much happens. The shooting again, the Grudge Throwers again, both of them go into the marching column unit of Sisters of the Thorn, who are stood behind the L wood that I've got there in the center. And this time one of them does die, which is nice, does mop up a single model. I believe one of the Sisters of the Thorn dies as well. So despite not being able to see, the shooting is doing some work there. Coming into my turn number 4, this is where I feel like I've got a fairly certain victory in the bag, because I'm starting to rack up points at a reasonable rate, and my Pillars of Fire are getting into the points that they need to. So first of all, the pillar that's nearby, the one that hit the Rangers last turn, goes through, kills another few models, 2 or 3. The one on the top right finally goes through those Rangers, kills maybe 2, 3 Rangers, something like that, but most importantly does hit the Dwarf cart, mops him up a nice 65 points there, which is fantastic. This is maybe a little bit greedy, because what it meant was I wasn't anywhere near the Grudge Throwers. Maybe it would have been better to just go for the Grudge Throwers, which are 100 points each, and go for that. I don't know. It's I think I could go either way on it, but I do mop up the 65 points there. And as you can see down at the bottom, I do kill the Dwarf Miners. In fact, do I leave one alive? I can't remember. I do a number of wounds to the Dwarf Miners. Looking at it, yes, no, that's right. I did kill the Dwarf Miner. It took an upsetting amount of shooting to finish him off, just considering all of the poison shooting that I had nearby. I do decide to leave the Doomseeker alive down the bottom left. I think, I can probably outrun it. It's a dwarf. I'm elves. It's not a problem. I'm just going to outrange everyone else. And I decide, that's going to do it for my turn 4. Coming into turn number 5, we've got Mikel, his turn. And Mikel just moves forwards again. He's just running forwards. And by that, I mean he declares a charge with the Doomseeker. I go, I don't want to fire and flee, because if I roll a 12... Sorry, I don't want to flee, because if I roll a double 6 on the dice, my squad of 5 Glade Riders flee off the board. So I'm going to fire and flee. I'm not aiming to kill my opponent. I'm not aiming to kill Mikel. What I'm looking for is I'm going to try and not flee as far. If you fire and flee, you only go the highest of 2d6. It's kind of like a fallback in good order, and you don't automatically rally. So I do my stand and shoot, or fire and flee. I get a poison and a hit. I say, I'm not going to take that poison. I've got the option. I'm going to roll the wound. I really don't want to kill this Doomseeker. At this point, Mikel's only got one more turn, so I can avoid it pretty easily. I roll my 2 wounds, and I roll double 6 to wound. So yeah, just kill it accidentally. This was hilarious at the time. We both thought that was pretty funny. But it does mean that Mikel doesn't lose the 50 points for the Doomseeker at the end of the game. Other than that, we've got the Pillars of Fire doing basically nothing this turn. I think I kill another two Rangers, but other than that, they just don't make it anywhere. This one in the center here, the one that's just touching the woods where the Rangers are, this has been moving for, I cast it on turn 1, so we're now, 9 d6 moves forwards. It's rolled 1s and 2s, a fairly upsetting amount. I shouldn't complain as a Wood Elf player playing lots of Pillars of Fire, but it is funny to see. It is funny to see how slowly it's inching across the board. This point, we're just mopping up. We're into turn 5. I move forwards. I mop up the last miner down the bottom. I think I'd killed him previously. I hadn't. I positioned my entire army to do it. I think the Glade Captain kills him with a single shot. The Pillars of Fire do real damage into the Rangers. I also reserve move out of the woods here and put loads of shots in. I cancel the tree singing woods that I'd placed down previously, and then after I've done everything else with the unit here in the center, I move them so that the Rangers aren't going to be causing any difficulty. The Pillar of Fire needed, I think, a 3 to hit the Grudge Throwers. I roll a 2, so it doesn't. Again, just another instance of the Pillar of Fire creeping forwards, and that's about it. I'm just picking up dwarves and trying to finish them off. Comes into Mikel's turn 6. We're in the dregs of the game. The Pillars of Fire do go through the Rangers. They do finish them off, and the Pillar of Fire hits both Grudge Throwers as well. At this point, I needed a 1 to go through them. I roll pretty exceptionally well. I do a single wound to the first Grudge Thrower, but then I roll triple 6 on the second one, picking it up, which is nice because we're, into this point, there's only 2 turns that I could theoretically hit it. So, yes, everything else is going well. All that Mikel has left is the big brick of Rangers and the characters attached therewithin. So I go into my last turn. I move up the pillar. It goes through. It does a wound to the Grudge Thrower. And then also I have, the the squad of Glade Riders with the 2 characters move up as well, and just manage to snipe off that last wound with some poison shooting. And that's that. That's the game. The score ended up being a 14-6 victory to me. I killed everything apart from the characters, inside of the Rangers. So there's 16 Rangers, Burlock, the Engineer, the Sapper, and I think the Thane as well. I feel like the Runesmith was dead, but because the Doomseekers obviously don't give up points when you kill them, it ended up only being about less than 1,000 points that I scored for killing stuff in Mikel's army. It was a really good game in terms of opponent. Mikel was absolutely lovely. I had a really good time, but it was one of those games where you don't feel like your opponent has much agency against you, which is kind of the big downside of the Wood Elves list. It's a lot of fun to play, but it's not a huge amount of fun to play against. So probably not something that I'm going to be doing outside of tournament play or tournament practice, realistically, because it's fairly one-sided games unless you get something that can rush you down, which